watching the news of a virus spread across our country, and it has now reached our state. And we learned this morning that it has now come as close to us as one of our neighbors in Ocean View. Many of us in this congregation have changed our plans. We have canceled travel. We are avoiding large events. There are many in our community who have decided not to come this morning and who will be hearing this sermon for the first time virtually online. So for our online community members, hello, we love you. For most of us, if not all of us, this is unprecedented. We are so fortunate to live in a place and a time where threats like polio and diphtheria and influenza have either been eradicated or are well controlled and managed. We have never faced a global pandemic on this scale before. And we are learning as we go, all of us. And it is not clear what the future holds. It feels like every couple hours, something new changes. Adjustments need to be made. So this morning, I want to take a few moments and think about this virus in conversation with a source of wisdom that we have, our Holy Scriptures. The passage for this morning has Jesus traveling from Judea to Galilee. They're two Jewish towns for a Jewish Messiah who has a Jewish message for the Jewish people. Going through Samaria, he goes through a land with a minority religious population that had been disagreeing with their Jewish neighbors for centuries. This was a small people whom Jesus' ministry did not concern. There's no reason in the text to believe that Jesus' message, the Jewish messianic message, would really have anything to do with the Samaritans. This time in Samaria should have been kind of like time in a bus terminal, an interlude between stories where the focus was on where Jesus had been and where Jesus was going. This is why the disciples are so shocked to find him in conversation with this woman at the well. She's not only a Samaritan, but she's a woman of no social standing. She has no husband, no children. She's a small player in a community of small players. An outcast in a community of outcasts. And yet, she is the first person outside of the disciples who received the message of Jesus. She is one of the people that Jesus reveals himself to most explicitly in all of the gospel stories. And she, after her encounter with Jesus, she has a change of heart. And she becomes the very first evangelist. Far from being a nobody or an outcast, this morning thousands of people around the world are talking about her. All these years later. If there is one thing that we are learning in this time of global pandemic. It is how connected we all are. It is easy, for me at least, to limit my scope of concern. I haven't previously spent a lot of time thinking about the healthcare system in Italy, for example. I hadn't, before now, fully considered the ways in which my uninsured neighbors, or folks without paid sick leave, who must keep working even when they are sick. I had not fully considered how that impacts me and makes all of our communities more vulnerable. As I read the news, I'm finding that this virus has the potential to widen the scope of my compassion and my thinking, showing me in new ways that we are, in fact, only as healthy as our most vulnerable community member. And that this word community encompasses more people than we might have previously thought. This broadening of concern is something that Jesus did again and again. He stretched and stretched the bounds of who was included, talking to Samaritans and outcasts, tax collectors, and people deemed unclean or unworthy. Let us consider the metaphor that we are meditating on today, that of living water. Water is something that all life needs. It is not specific to any region or any diet or any background. It's not even specific to humans. Plants and animals and insects need it. Every living thing. Water is a great connector between people and between places. It is essential to all. So as Christians, perhaps we can approach this time of the coronavirus as an invitation into a spiritual practice, a way to grow into our calling, to be people of God. We can cultivate and appreciate this increased awareness of connectedness. For this new awakening of our hearts and minds is a lesson taught by the Gospels, and not one to be taken lightly. In the weeks ahead, we can do this in many ways. We can pray for all who are impacted by the virus, not only here, but all around the world. We can also intentionally think about who is vulnerable around us close to home. Who are the people in our community who will be especially impacted by quarantines, by social distancing? Are there undergraduates coming home, having given up sports and games and job fairs and social connections? Who are the young parents in our lives who are now home with their children for unprecedented amounts of the day, and who would perhaps love the phone to ring and find on the other end of it someone above the age of 10? I bet there are people we can think of. Who are people who are less able to stock up on groceries or people whose livelihood depends on in-person sales or large events, who might need a friend to check in on them. We will be sending out more information in the weeks to come, but I encourage you to go home and perhaps pray over the church directory and see if you can find 3 people there to call. You can ask how they are doing. You can offer any help that you can give. We can share our experiences, we can listen, and we can hold each other in calming and healing prayer. While we must physically distance, we can use this time to spiritually and emotionally connect. These next few weeks will be difficult. I will miss being with you in worship and for suppers and for groups. And I will be the first to tell you that I don't know what to expect. What I do know is that there are opportunities here to strengthen our ties to one another and to grow as the people of God. I do know also that God walks with us, sending us peace and love and calling us to lives of compassion and responsibility and service. I hope that we can take this opportunity to drink deeply from that old gospel teaching that we are all connected as we get to learn this lesson firsthand through an unlikely and unpleasant microscopic messenger. Let us greet this as an opportunity to lean into loving and supporting one another across all barriers and borders, following the one who did this best of all, our strength and our comfort, Jesus Christ. Praise be to God, and amen. So as we keep thinking about things that are not going to be canceled in the next 2 weeks, I just want to say, prayer is not canceled. Talking to Jesus is not canceled. Let's stand and let's get into this last hymn. Those are amazing. All right, as you go from this place, may you go loving God so much that you love nothing else too much, and fearing God just enough that you need never fear anything else at all.